So my name is Myra Nagy. I'm an advocate for people that are unhoused. I'm still adjusting to not being housed. I mean, to being housed opposed to not being unhoused. Sorry about that. And I do arts and crafts and stuff for therapy. I have a couple kids that I'm reuniting with and trying to form relationships with. But mostly I just adjust to the lifestyle of not being homeless anymore. Sewing, like I said, painting, making bracelets, the new thing. Right now I sit on the Consumer Advisory Board at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I've been doing that for a few years. Let me see what else. I just recently got appointed in a position at the National Consumer Advisory Board, and that's under the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. And I do sit on several panels because the issues of being unhoused is a big issue, and the troubles going through navigating in that area is hard. Navigating through the unhoused area of the community and trying to get housed is hard to do. So.
Tell me, why don't we start, whatever you're comfortable sharing from your experience, let's talk to me about your journey.
So, my journey started off, I want to say, not childhood, but it started off when I was living here, moved to Colorado. I was married. It was early marriage. It was too soon to be married. And I followed my husband out here, and I was working for his company because they were a company, a contractor that sold newspaper door to door. And he moved to Costa Rica and decided to stay. They had an online poker thing in Costa Rica they were doing, and he decided to stay. And with that, he decided to divorce me from over there. And right, through word of mouth, tell somebody else to tell me. And then that was my first trauma. I didn't realize it. So then I had to move because my income changed, working still for the same organization, which was his, combined with two other partners. And the last place I lived in, had a boyfriend. I finally got a boyfriend, and he was an alcoholic. And I didn't know he was that bad until one day he got sick. I was supposed to be going to work. I had already changed jobs to working for Dish Network, and he got sick. And then I was like, what am I going to do? It's early in the morning, the birds are chirping, and I went and got some medicine for his symptoms. And when I got back, he was not alive. So that's my second big trauma. He passed away on my couch. It's actually like the couch sitting over here, same color, but I've adjusted by now. And then that really started my spiraling, where I started not caring about paying rent and making the work on time. It was just a lot of stuff I stopped caring about. And then all of a sudden, of course, I got evicted because I wasn't paying rent. Go figure. And my friend was helping me, and she came down here from California and helped me move all my stuff into storage. And then I was couch surfing for a few years. The couch surfing was okay, but the last one was I moved in with my friend's mom, moved out, moved somewhere else, and then moved back in with my friend's mom, and that was the worst part because I was on the floor, there was bed bugs, and then he started sleeping on the floor too, and it was just too much trying to commute from work and back to where I was staying there. So I went down and moved to the homeless community because I couldn't live there with the bugs, Then it was commuting from downtown, which is where the homeless community is, to work. Should I just keep going?
Yeah, no, you're doing great. So straight up, you're gonna tell me stuff that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I don't wanna.
Yeah, and then ask questions. So the homeless community, I was working at Dish Network, commuting from downtown, hurry up and get something to eat, and get to downtown Littleton. and I would start work around 11, and like the best meal was the sandwich line at 10 o'clock at, I think it's called, not Trinity, Holy Ghost Church. 10 o'clock, you get a sandwich, great. But that wasn't enough. I needed to get everything together and get down to Littleton in time to start work at 11. So I was hitting this other church, and it was way far away and off the light rail, and that was the fastest way to get there. So it was just so much to where I started giving up on working. My stuff was still in storage. I was giving up on my storage because I didn't realize I had trauma, and that I was depressed, and all these things were, falling underneath. Somewhere in there, I found a boyfriend, but I still was, commuting, and then I just stopped going to work. And then eventually they fired me. Of course, that makes sense, right? So after being fired, I just stayed in the homeless community. I had PTSD really bad because I was seeing flashes of the boyfriend that had passed away on the couch. I would see him on other people's faces. I'd see him around town. It was just flashes of him around town. When it wasn't on a person's face, it was just a flash. So that I knew there was something wrong, but I was just trying to live whatever everybody was telling me in the community, because everybody has their idea of how to live in the homeless community. So I was following whatever the rules were to the best of my ability. I was living off my friend's money that she would send me, and then finally, after being fired, I was able to apply for unemployment, which by then I was like, stop sending me money. That's when I got me a laptop, and I would start using the library as my best place to stay. Spend most of the day. Luckily, the downtown Central Library, Denver Library, was open Monday and Tuesday all the way up until 8 p.m. So I could spend the whole day. Get up in the morning, go to from wherever I was sleeping, like in an alley or wherever the caravan was, because sometimes we would sleep in caravans, sometimes we would sleep in alleys, wherever we needed to sleep. And so we'd get up, go to St. Francis, was a day shelter that opened like at 6 o'clock. You get in line or whatever, so you can get your cup of coffee. And then you wait until the mail service was open so you can get your mail and get your storage from there. And it's just a small bag of storage, so you can go through your hygiene or whatever and wash up, take a shower. And then I would hightail it to the library, and had little community over there, library community, the laptop people. That was okay for a while. That's when I really started being more comfortable, because my boyfriend at the time is alcoholic, substance. That substance, it was his way of coping, and so he would leave me, and I couldn't use the caravan all the time. I didn't feel comfortable, so sometimes I had to sleep by myself. And shelters, if you want to stay till library till 8, you can't get in a shelter. And it's hard. It was hard for women to get in shelters. They had the domestic violence shelter, and they were just starting a couple new ones, but it was really hard getting into shelter as a woman. Most of the time I just slept either with a group of the people I had already slept with before, or I would go to the spot, especially on the weekends. There was a spot on 15th and Winecoop. They had these old porches of businesses that was shut down, and I would sleep there because the clubbers that would on that street were the nice ones. So I would sleep there and just bring my rolly backpack and sleep there, so I could get up and do the library thing again. After a while, I did get tired of it, really tired of it. I think the worst part was I was tired of waiting for this boyfriend to figure out what he wanted to do. I was getting medical attention. I joined a program called PATH because that was one of the things you were told to do. And PATH would help you find housing. But one of the requirements that you had to have some mental illness and be unhoused. That was the requirements. And of course, I think I had that. I thought I needed extra, but apparently I didn't. Just seeing my boyfriend flashes everywhere, the ex-boyfriend face flashed everywhere was enough. So I was getting that, but then I decided I'm gonna get serious. And so I started going to my appointments on a regular basis. And I think it had hit a year or so, and then I switched over to the regular housing. And within a few months, I found out, I got a place. The first thing they offered me was this place called, I think it's the YMCA. It's right there on top of 16th Street Mall with no kitchen. And of course, being unhoused, you're like, I want everything. Of course you want everything, but I couldn't get everything. So I just said, no, I want one with a kitchen. And this building was brand new. They were building it. So I was able to move in here. After moving here, it wasn't easy because, of course, I still had trauma and didn't know it. So I brought one person with me here. It was a gay guy, so I didn't have no problem with him living with me. But I let him run everything. He was in control of everything. And I didn't realize that he needed to have that control. But then he started to be on the wrong path of substance misuse. My ex did too. He dabbled too. By that time, he had got a place. We were still on and off. He was still drinking, but he was living in another Colorado Coalition building. By the way, that's what this is, a Colorado Coalition for the Homeless building. And he was dabbling, but I got deep into it to where then I realized something bad was happening with my life. I was struggling with paying rent, and I was getting SSDI, which is money you get once you've worked previously. And I should have been able to pay my rent, easy peasy, but I was struggling. And so I looked up a solution, like maybe if I turn off my lights, not my lights, my TV, but like cable and my cell phone, and stop communicating with everybody, I could single it out, this process of elimination. I couldn't figure it out, and then finally I joined Narcotics Anonymous with the help of my case manager. With the right case manager, you can get help. And we went through several case managers, of course. It's like every 2 years we change case managers. But this one found the right one for me, a tech one, where I can do it online and then in person. And then I slowly started coming out of the heavy addiction. But I went back in because I tried to get a sponsor. And the sponsor flaked on me. And so after this sponsor flaked, I relapsed. So I went back to using, and by then I brought in another friend. The one that was living with me, I kicked him out and brought in another friend that was alcoholic, and I had a dealer living with me. Yeah, it was really bad. And I knew I needed to get in my recovery and get deep if I wanted this to stop. I was at the precipice, at that edge where I could have did things which would have put me in the wrong kind of category, like a street worker, and I didn't want to cross that line. So I lied to them, the people living with me, and said, I'm going to rehab. And I packed a suitcase, which wasn't mine, it was just one that was cute. Made it look like I was packed, and I just locked the door. Kept telling them every day, and then the funny part, I had a friend down on the second floor that's been here for a long time, Lori, and I said, can I come and stay with you while I make them believe that I'm going to rehab? So I packed my suitcase, locked the door, walked them out, and then went to her apartment. I did get on the bus so that they thought I was really going to rehab. But then I stayed at her house most of the day until they left, and then I got serious with my recovery. I've had my sponsor since, I think, 2017, and I've been clean since then. Haven't went back. It was hard because this is a building where people that come from the streets live here. There are a lot of previously unhoused living here, and they have the same traits, and they want to keep the same community, keep bringing them in. And I had several people, one person I had to threaten to tell his case manager so that he would stop bringing drugs to my door. So if you bring drugs to my door, I had to write him a letter. I told him in person that didn't work, so I wrote him a letter and said, if you bring drugs to my door, I will tell your case manager, and that's when it stopped. I went pretty fast over everything, but I started developing these little crafts here and there. I always knew how to sew. I was always invited to go do the art because the art place, Reach at Redline, the Reach Community Studios at Redline is around the corner from St. Francis, that day shelter. So I knew it was there. I knew people that was there already. I just wasn't ready to start. And once I started healing from the recovery, that's when I could dive into like, more art therapy or more sewing therapy. And now it's like I've been always advocating and being like the resource lady and helping with technology with people, but now advocating is really important to me, advocating to people so they're not slipping through the cracks like I could have if I didn't have that ambition to do better. So, do you have some questions?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to completely let you off the hook and just take over, but the questions are probably tricky too.
That's okay.
Like, how many years were you between housing? I'm gonna say unhoused or houseless.
Houseless.
Because whether it's couch surfing or just hardcore on the street, how many years was that?
I want to say 2009, maybe 2009 to 2012. It seems like I stayed on and off with my friend's mom, and then a boyfriend helped me get a place for a couple months, but I stayed with another friend for it seemed like a year while I was still working, and that was the couch surfing stuff. But on the streets, it seemed like that was like a year and a half.
So when I ask a question, if you can kind of put that question into your answer, like, oh, I was.
I apologize.
No, I didn't even tell you. I apologize.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So I was kind of unhoused for about. I can't guess the years. I want to say from 2009 to about 2012. That unhoused life was, half couch surfing, and then at least a year and a half on the physical streets, if not 2 years on the physical streets, sleeping in alleys and parking garages, and like I said, on 15th Street on porches. I even slept on Cherry Creek or Platte downtown at first because that seemed safer because joggers passing by. So yeah, all that. That was a long time.
Yeah. I'll probably ask some questions that could get, triggery, and I don't wanna, but I don't even want to start there. And anytime we're getting close, you just say the word, all right? But are there good bits to being unhoused, like elements of community, or what are the things that folks who haven't confronted it might not understand that work there?
Well, some of the good things about being unhoused is the community of the unhoused. They protect you. For example, the caravan, when we would go on caravan, I call it caravanning because we have all our carts, and we would come from the unhoused, the main area downtown, and we would go to the area where we were going to sleep. It would be like 5 to 10 of us, and we would go and we would all sleep in our little, separate, but we were close together. So that was safe, because there was a time downtown when they were going around and beating up the homeless. Another thing that was good about the living unhoused, was some of the shelters were really great. They had a lot of good facilities and support. Colorado Coalition had a great support, but it seemed you had to graduate to that. So the first one was St. Francis. That area right there, I believe it was built and purposely so that the unhoused would stay in that area. So they had St. Francis, they had Samaritan House, and they had Jesus Save, or the Salvation Army, however you call it. We call it Jesus Save, because that's what the sign says. So if you didn't get food from Jesus Save, because they fed 3 times a day. So feeds and fed, that's how we characterize the meals. And they fed us 3 times a day, so that was always an option if you didn't like their food, and their food was like, I want to say gel. I've never really had gel food, but it was, edible, and it would fill you up. Whereas some places like St. Francis, they had a soup kitchen every It was like twice a week, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and there were hot food. One of them was the green chili day, and everybody came for that. They opened a deck of cards and handed out. So that was fun, and see who got the best card trading, and all this stuff was happening. So that was fun. The good part about St. Francis, they had clothes. They had a clothing closet where you could come in, do work, and get a ticket either to go in a clothing closet that day, or you can work that night and have one for the next morning. And you can get clothes, shoes, backpacks, all kinds of stuff. Of course, free hygiene was always offered. They had a mail service. They had a phone on the wall so you can contact whoever you need it. And then they had a small storage. So that's a lot for someone sleeping on the streets, and you need something to repeat all the time. Another good thing that happened is, like I said, Samaritan House was okay, but they had a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules. So if you stick to the area, there was job opportunities if you needed money on the go. So St. Francis had a little job place, and because they had a little door, it was just a door for job, there was a lot of people that would frequent it. Like I'm gonna say vendors or employers that would come by. That would, let's say, doing flyers and drive up and say, hey, who wants to do flyers today? And they would grab those people and repeat them until, some people would flake, and then they would do it again and start over again. So that was good stuff too. And then there was always, during the holidays, they were really generous in that area. People would just set up places in parking lots and hand out food, hand out clothes and gloves and socks. They had the clothing closet. There was a lot of good stuff that happened. I forget about all those good things. I could probably go on and on a list of good things. The things that were, and then they had help you sign up for services and stuff like that, and help you get IDs, and they knew where to go, the basic places. But everybody had their own list. And if you didn't have it on this list, you had to go check another list, and sometimes you had to travel all over town until you found word of mouth where the places is. So the bad part was the word of mouth, but the good part is that there was services to get things done if that's what you wanted to do. Like I said, I can go on and on.
What are some of the, it doesn't have to be hardcore, but what are like some of the, when you were talking about the having to travel to get the things that you needed, what are some of the harder things?
So travel is, one of the harder things is travel, because you are walking, you're using your feet. So luckily they had the once a year shoe thing that you can get used or new shoes, but otherwise you had to travel. There was like one place that gave you bus tickets on a Sunday night, but it's at 850 Lincoln. But that's far from downtown in that Broadway / Arapahoe, Park Avenue West area. That's a long ways to travel on foot. You had your card. If you went and did that on that Sunday night, that means you're not getting a shelter. You had to choose. Do you want a shelter or do you want the bus tickets? Like they had that thing that happened where I think they called them skinheads. I don't know what they were, but it was a group of individuals that was going around finding homeless and beating people up if you were asleep on the streets. They would do it at nights. Plus, of course, you were always characterized as somebody that's going to destroy someone's restroom. So restrooms was hard to find. If you didn't use the day shelters that had the showers, you weren't going to get a shower. You weren't going to clean up, and people didn't want you to use the restroom. They didn't want you to come and hang out. And even if you had money to eat, they really didn't like you to come and eat because you were unhoused. You were limited on the places you could go. If you couldn't take it, let's say it's a Saturday, there's no responsibilities, nothing to do on a Saturday. And so if you needed something to do, you had to trek down to the library. The library in that area only opened certain days. So, and you can't hang out in St. Francis all day. It's just a bunch of smelly, unhoused. You want to be productive. And another thing I think that was hard is figuring out the community and how it works. You had to, if you were sharp, like I was, you were able to figure it out pretty fast. And there was a system and multiple systems. Like, for example, there was a group that stuck to certain types of feeds and places to go. And there's another group that's sticking to ways to get extra money. Another one's sticking to ways to hustle for, let's say, substances and stuff. So you had to figure out what you pull from here to figure out what to do for your next step. It was hard just to go to meetings every day. If you wanted to go to a meeting to find housing, you had to figure out, do I let my food go to go to this? Stand in line for 3 to 4 hours to get this ticket and for a lottery to get housing or not. There's a lot. It took time to figure some of this stuff out and find the easy ways, but it wasn't overnight. It wasn't in 6 months. It took a long time, and then I was sharp enough to find resources that would help me travel. And luckily, I was able to get that unemployment, so I could avoid all the stuff I did when I first got there. I didn't have to keep living the life of struggling on trying to travel all over to get things done.
I want to telescope out a little bit.
Okay.
Zoom out. You obviously know your experiences, but you probably have encountered a lot of homeless people, or a lot of the unhoused who are in various stages of their journey. Who do you feel like winds up on the street?
Well, I think the people I think that fall on the street are normal people. I met someone down there, for example, that Hurricane Katrina, I believe that's what happened. He was on the streets because of that. So you don't expect that be a reason. There was a guy that was a college professor, and he was from Germany and really intelligent, but he was on the streets because he had lost his place because his wife had passed away, and the process of PTSD. There were some people that had heavy mental conditions where they would talk to themselves, and they didn't know how to communicate. For example, there was one that I knew he wanted to talk with me. Maybe he'd like me, but I was the only person he would talk with. But I just seen him recently down in that area, and he's still unhoused and talks to himself, but when he would make eye contact, I knew he was talking to me. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people that the reason why they get unhoused, they get down there, is there's traumatic things that happen to them. It's a milestone in their life, and before you know it, a domino affects them into that situation. Of course, there's the people that are unhoused because they started with substance misuse, whether it's alcohol or opioids, whatever, and they got down there and they stayed down there. But and then there's the people that the family don't want to take care of them because their mental issues are too overwhelming, and so they had to stay there. Someone I think I just saw recently, we called her Scary Mary because she would wear heavy eyeshadow over her eyes, and I think she's still unhoused, but we hadn't seen her for a while, and she was, good looking Caucasian person. And a lot of men tried to exploit her, and I felt so bad for her, but she was afraid to talk to people. But for some reason, whoever her family, they left her down there, and she had strong mental illness issues. And I've seen a lot of women being abused. Started with one abuse, and then they got unhoused, and then they had to stay there, and the abuse kept up because they don't know how to come out of the abusive relationships. They're repeating the same situation over again. I mean, there's so many cases. I can go on and on, but the thing is, there's not just one reason people get unhoused. The pandemic is a perfect example. There's a lot of people that I know that had jobs and lost their place because of the pandemic, and they had to live this unhoused life. Some came out and some didn't. I mean, and you think about other milestones, like I said, the Hurricane Katrina caused that to happen as well. Mine was a domino effect as well. I quit my job because the guy died on my couch, and then I had PTSD. There was a lot of veterans down there too. Same thing. And then sometimes the way to cope is substance misuse, and I'm encapsulating all the alcohol and substance together, and it soothes for a while, but it's hard to come out when you're self-medicating and you don't have the facilities to get out. So I believe that's some of the reasons people become unhoused and they get stay on the streets. And everybody's level, the reason why they're different is it's a more of, are they willing to put themselves through the stigma and the trauma to get out, because there's more trauma involved trying to get out, because you get stigmatized for applying at different places, stigmatized how you dress, how you look, where your address is. For example, if you use St. Francis as an address, you're stigmatized because of that. So that's a lot of work trying to be housed, go through the process. So some people stay for years until they're tired. Some people take their time and they meet the right person that helps them. Sometimes it's people from the street, sometimes it's social workers or case managers, and some people are like me and they do it on their own. So that's the different levels, but that's my understanding of why a lot of people are unhoused.
Something I want to turn the conversation to sort of a more hopeful and personal topic. And so I even zoomed out the lens so I could like see your environment here. What is the process of like working through the trauma? How do you? What are the strategies and how? Right, it's not easy. I know it, but tell me about it.
So, from my experience, my strategies or the way to work through my trauma to get from unhoused to housed, it was a process. It wasn't easy, of course, but it was a process of me figuring out what worked for me. First, I had to figure out how to get housed. And one of the ways that I learned is using the PATH program to using the housing. And both of these are through Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. There are other places that house people. Denver Housing Authority has a once-a-year lottery system. Some people get it, some people don't. That's probably the hardest one to get on. But that's the one that gives you that Section 8 where you can move throughout anywhere you want to move. That's one process. Now, once you get housed, you can start working on therapy. You can try therapy while you're unhoused, but it's really hard because it's limited. Because if it's not in the area where you're sleeping and the shelters are, you can only get partial. So like WellPower is the new name. It used to be MHCD. It's nowhere near that area. It is a good travel for me, let alone from the people unhoused. So that was hard to get. So getting housed is the first step. Then because I went through my substance use, I was able to start recovery. And in recovery there, they have the step work. That step work workbook, it actually works on your internal issues. It starts with substance misuse and it works its way out to a broader spectrum. So it's, I think it's based on DBT or CBT. Those are different types of therapy. And I think that's why it worked for me. Then I started learning of self-soothing things like the sewing and the art. But I love being outdoors. Love the outdoors. Anytime I can be outside, I'll be outside. Even when I was unhoused, we would go and camp in Golden at their campsite. They had a place for a tent, and we would just do that like a vacation away from the unhoused community. But that helped too. But you got to work hard to find out what actually makes you not stress out, not worry about your life, not worry about where you are, and judge yourself. Let alone the other people judging you, not judging yourself. So you can start enjoying being alive, because I beat myself up a lot. My sponsor used to say, you can put that bat down. And it wasn't intentionally, it's just, the guilt of that I was unhoused, that I went through substance misuse, that I had to, live my life according to the community so that I can, function as a person. This group says do this and that, and I would follow it because I didn't know what else to do. It took some time before I stopped allowing that to beat me up, take a hold of my depression. So that's one way out. I mean, there's multiple ways to get out, but as I started volunteering, as a part of Narcotics Anonymous, their rules was to be of service. I didn't want to be of service in Narcotics Anonymous because it would have brought me back to where I was. So you have to realize, some things you can't do because it'll mess you up. So I chose to sit on a couple panels. A few years into my recovery, I applied for a job at at the Denver Public Library. They had a peer position there. And only a few years, maybe 2 years into my recovery, no use. And then my friend that was still in house said, "Oh, okay, we're going to send all the homeless over there. I'm going to just get a sign up and send them all over to you to get the help." And then I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, that's too much. I can't handle it." So I quit. After I had signed all the paperwork, I quit because it was too much for me. I knew my boundaries. I knew I couldn't pass that level. But that's just one thing. I was still sitting on a board, which is the Consumer Advisory Board at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I was still sitting on that board, but as a member, and I was doing okay. I tried another panel, but it was too overwhelming. It was too many people involved. It was like 18 people, and it was like it was a state panel, and it had to do with, I guess, just income and how people deal with life. And it was too much. I did 3 interviews for that panel. It's just a panel where they pay you with monetary gifts, and 3 interviews, which is crazy, right? So I couldn't do that. It was just too many different personalities. And being in recovery, you have to set boundaries. Not everybody knows how to deal with everything. I'm one of those people that are lucky. I was blessed with ability to communicate with people on different levels and comprehend people's their feelings. I want to say I call it the gift of understanding. So I empathize with people. So it's just natural. I can't process it like until you break it down, but it's just easy. So I could see where I needed to go and where I didn't need to go, but that's also my downfall. I tend to help too many people. So I ended up helping too many people. I had a computer class here, and people now, they still bug me and want me to do it for free after I tried charging them so that they would stop, because I don't want to stop, because I have an issue with helping people. I want to help everyone. But that makes me feel good, helping someone on the streets. I see someone on a bus and it looks like they need a ticket and I have one. I'm gonna give it to them. But everybody got to find their boundaries when they're coming from unhoused to housed. It's a long process, and I learned to navigate because I relied on my previous experiences to help me filter out the things I need. So sewing, I don't know, I have always sewed a little bit. Got it from my aunt. She was one of those people that can do everything. She had a green hand, I guess you would say, not a thumb. She can grow anything, anywhere. She could crochet, she can sew, she could cook. She had children. She knew how to use a shotgun, everything. So I got a little bit of her skills, so I used that to soothe me. When I first got here, I could not enjoy my place by myself. Now, I love having private time. That's who I was before. I'm not the same person I was before I got on the streets, before I was unhoused. But I've accepted that this is who I am now, someone who advocates for others. So sitting on the Consumer Advisory Board, and now on the National Consumer Advisory Board, sitting on multiple panels, doing multiple interviews, doing documentaries. My thing is sharing my story. It may be triggering, but if that will help someone else see a different view of people who are unhoused and that everybody are lazy or need motivation, stories, what can I help motivate them? You know, sometimes that's not it. It's things that are happening internally that you can't see that's happening, that's causing these problems. So I want to be that voice for them. I sit on this organization called Elevated Denver. That was a podcast I did. That was the first time telling my story, and that was super traumatic. Going from the beginning all the way up until now. So that really hurt. But that story right there has got a lot of people thinking about, maybe I'm looking at, the unhoused differently. being on the national level, meeting people from other states in a community to where we're working on the same healthcare is housing is healthcare and things like that, where the healthcare professionals are meeting with consumers. That's what they're calling us, the people that with lived experience, previously unhoused, with all the other backgrounds, mental illness slash substance use slash, you can put them all slashes. Meeting with us to understand how do we talk, how do we help, how do we, in our profession, come together to work together. So that was eye-opening, that there's so much more to do than just, helping people here in the building and with their phones, how to use their Obama phones and stuff like that. I can actually help on a national level as well as my local level, so that the podcast, we've been working on that one. That's another panel I've been on since early on.
Let me, you described when you were unhoused on the street, living on like 15th and Wine Coop.
Right.
So I lived on 15th and Wazee, so I was a block away. And I don't think we met.
No. So when I would sleep on 15th and Wine Coop, it was usually a Saturday or a Sunday because I was waiting till the business was closed. It was a pizza slash bar slash something there on Wine Coop, on the corner of Wine Coop and 15th. I forgot what it's called, Wine Coop something.
Well, the Wazee Supper Club was on 15th.
Maybe it was Wazee. Maybe that's the one. And so right across was these two porches, and they had tiles. And that's where I would sleep, because the people that would go to the clubs in the area would pass me at nights. I didn't go there until nighttime. And I would, when it would get late is when I would start, like 2 is when I start trying to fall asleep. But of course, with one eye open. But that was still the safest opposed to the other areas. Even when I slept on, what's that, Cherry Creek that runs along Spear? There was always bikers or somebody passing by, but that was still safer than the downtown area because it was more normal people. I'm saying normal people that have jobs and stuff passing by. So I felt safe there, but it was still with one eye open.
So I didn't know you.
Right.
What do people who are your neighbors who don't know you, and maybe they misunderstand, or maybe they understand aspects you don't even want them to understand, but how do you close that gap? How do you bring people? I guess the question is, what should I have known about you then when you were a block from my house?
What you should have known about me back then was that I wasn't unhoused on purpose. I wasn't trying to take advantage of systems. I wasn't trying to be the person that was lazy. I was traumatized. And I didn't realize I was traumatized. I didn't know that I had PTSD. I didn't know why I didn't have the motivation, lack of a better word, to go and get a job and move out. I knew something was wrong, and it was scary. The trauma was constantly around me in my mind, and getting up and getting a job and applying and going to that next level, which I've done plenty of times. I think this is the longest in my life I've been without a normal job, because when I was young, I always worked, maybe a week off of work, skipping jobs. But in that environment, I was traumatized with multiple traumas, and they added on top of each other. My husband leaving, and which people don't realize that could be traumatizing. I don't have family here in Colorado, 0 family. And then the guy dying on my couch. Can you imagine touching and trying to see if you could resuscitate someone has been gone already for a while, and you that kind of trauma, it affects you in a way to where if you don't see me as a normal human being that's just went through some bad things, and that's why I'm there, you see me as a lazy person, that means that you're just viewing through that rose-colored lens. You're grouping people in all in one group. You don't know me. Try to get to know me. Talk to me. Ask me a question. Like, why are you unhoused? why are you sleeping here on this porch? Maybe you'll get the answers instead of assuming what's happening. I mean, most unhoused, once you talk to them about something normal, like, how do you think, the weather is? And then they'll start talking normal. And then you can ask them personal questions about what's happening with them and why they are the way they are. And then they'll tell you the truth about what's happening. It doesn't take like years to get to know a person. It takes a few minutes of your time and caring about their situation and really listening,
So I want to telegraph, because we've been going. Battery's good. We've 41 minutes. There are 3 tough topics I want to ask you about.
Okay.
And they're not necessarily about you. They're just in that closing the divide or crossing the bridge sense. I feel like when people whose housing situation is secure think about the downtown Denver homeless scene, they will typically think of extreme mental illness, drugs, and crime. And that may or may not be fair, but I would like to, one by one, because I would love a solution to some of those issues. You know what I mean? But
right.
What you were talking about, those feel like hard problems to solve. How do you start solving them?
So I guess if I was to look at it, I agree that the problems when you look at downtown is, I believe, strong mental illness, substance misuse are major. There is some crime down there, but not necessarily because of the unhoused. Some of it is related to the dealers and their motivations. Either they're doing the crime or they're motivating the people that are on the substances. For example, some substances make you want to get more and you're more and more. And then you're at the point where you don't even realize what you're doing, what's happening around you. The object is to do whatever I have to do to get more. And if it means like stealing a surgery protector to sell for $2, because I was just talking to a guy in here about them stealing that, and that's that $2 to buy that next drug. So the crime is more of that. There might be some mental illness that causes like vandalism, and but the mental illness could, I call them mental conditions, because it's something that people are living with, not so much who they are. The way to work on it is, I would look at it as individually, but as a group, it's everybody should have the right to accept help or not to accept help. They shouldn't be forced into it. I would like to help everybody. I would love to, let's round them all up and put them in a room and see what the problem is, but then you're forcing them to get help. Would you like someone to force you to try a new system that will help you not grow hair or help you not wear glasses? You wouldn't want anyone to force you. So
it might depend on what they were forcing me to do, but yeah, no, I hear you.
But you don't have anything, and now you're being forced in a situation. So I think first with the mental illness, I think there should be people that are trauma informed at all times. I mean, extreme trauma informed, to where it's like a violent trauma has happened. Like for example, let's say they've been through the war or something like that. That kind of trauma, to where they know how to approach people on that level, be willing to talk, and see if people want some help. It's going to take time. There's tons of people walking around and doing and passing out stuff, but people got to want to get the help. First of all, they don't know that they need mental help. They don't know it. They think they're normal. They think it's normal when they're talking to themselves, having this conversation, and they're reminiscing about an incident that happened to them, and they're getting violent and angry. They're not talking to you. You just triggered something. So it's going to take time to take groups a little bit at a time. If they could get maybe the people that are on the streets, you have to stay on the streets a while and get known to them, to where you're a familiar face. familiar person that is always kind. Then you can start talking to them in groups. And it would take a lot of people to do that. As for the substance misuse, that could be a side effect of the mental illness or vice versa, where it starts with substance use and then the mental illness is the side effect. So substance misuse, I believe in harm reduction first, which is if they can do safe use without overdose, try that first, and then see if with safe use, knowing that you care enough to help them use safely, that maybe they'll think about not using. And that takes time too with more groups. There's an organization called, I think is Harm Reduction is a center. If they had more of those centers in that area, just like they had more behavioral health or mental illness organizations that want to help in a non-abrasive way in that area where they're outreaching for both at the same time. Of course, crime will go down when those issues are worked on, but not all the crime is the unhoused. Some of the crime is the dealers in the area. They're doing crimes too. They're the one bringing weapons, bringing guns. How is the unhoused sleeping on the street going to go and get a gun when they have no money? So these are the dealers that are in that area that are bringing that stuff in there. But imagine, let's say mental health is at 80% or 90% in that area. And you start working on ways for people to go to groups and they're fed and they're clothed and they get some of the things that they are saying that they need. You know, of course, you're asking them these hard questions. What do you need? And then you're inviting them to groups and they know your face and they trust you, because trust is the major issue. And then they're going to groups. And of course, they have the misuse issue, but you have one of those groups there. And maybe it's a combined group to where it's an art therapy session where they can go to both. They can get some therapy that helps them with their substance use, and they're learning that if you trade off this food for this substance, would that help? Ask them what they need, and then they have this downtown, as like they have the Salvation Army, that might help reduce it. It could go down 50%. The crime would be almost gone.
Let me pivot
Okay.
question a little bit.
Okay.
It feels to me, having talked to a lot of folks who were, on the streets temporarily or enduringly, that a lot of them have family gaps, holes in their lives that maybe started when they were kids, or maybe now they don't have the family to rely on like they maybe years ago used to. Or maybe that's just mythology, right? Maybe nobody's ever had family to rely on, but it feels like families are strained in a way now that feels unique and dangerous or perilous.
Well, I'm going to touch on that note about families not being around or being estranged or gaps in the ties to family. I believe it varies. I think it happens to everyone, whether they're unhoused or not. Support, whether it's family or not, is more important than what type of support, whether it has to be family support. Just having support is more important. So I live here without family, but that has nothing to do with, my family is still supportive. They're supporting when I told them about my substance use. They were supportive when I was unhoused. They couldn't afford to help me, but they were supportive. I was still communicating to them the whole time. I don't believe family specifically is the solution. Of course, any kind of support can help. If someone has support with their decision making on trying to help themselves, that's gonna be an extreme motivation to keep going because you got that pat on the back every time they make one good decision and something's changed. It's not even, it doesn't have to be big. It can be something small like, okay, you started wearing a nice shirt every day. Good job. And now you're like, well, maybe I should, take showers now. And then it starts getting progressive, but any kind of support is important. That's why I was saying the support of seeing that person's face repeatedly. Now that's support. Let's say Jim, the outreach worker, he comes around all the time. We had one named Bernie who retired, and he was always kind. So we remembered his name because he was always out there. He was always kind. You always need some water. One night, me and my boyfriend was out on the streets, and he's like, hey, do you guys need a hotel for the night? He got us. And so we'll never forget Bernie because that's the support we needed at the time. He was the main support. He wasn't family. My ex-boyfriend has tons of family all over the city. Tons. I can't even keep up with all his family members. He's got first cousins that are closer to, old enough to be his parents. And he's got second cousins and that are closer to his age. And then it spreads out. And they still have aunts. And there's no and step brothers and step sisters. And it goes on. But that didn't help him. He needs a different type of support. It's the kind of support that's specific to him, that helps him. So I don't think family specifically will resolve it. I think good support resolves the issues.
Okay. Yeah, that was terrific. I'm going to turn the camera off.
Okay.
Is there something that I didn't ask that I should have? Is there something you just want to say? Or is there something that you said before I turn the camera off that you maybe don't want me to include?
No, I don't care about what you include. My thing is, I think everybody should think about the unhoused as humans. Everyone is a human. All it takes is one thing, one traumatic milestone in your life, and you could be unhoused and be in the same situation. It could be your wife leaving you and you go through this PTSD from it, and now you are unhoused. Or you got in a car accident, you lost your car, you lost your job because you're disabled, and now you're unhoused. Any situation can happen. So just keep an open mind that everybody is the same. It's just they've been through different situations.